so a quick disclaimer before we get started today. We have done our best to present this information accurately and clearly, but the content is subject to change. For the most up-to-date information, consult Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada, also known as IRCC. They can be found at ircc.canada.ca.
We have today with us Yin Zan, our international student immigration advisor from the Center for International Experience. My name is Duran Collymore. I'm an academic advisor here at Woodsworth College in the Registrar's Office, and I primarily serve international students for their academic planning and advising. Yin, I will let you take it away from here. Thank you.
Thank you. So hi everyone. So my name is Yun, and I'm an immigration advisor here at CIE U of T. So I'm very glad to have the chance to meet with you and also have a detailed discussion about how to apply for a study permit, as well as how to apply for a visitor visa and stay in Canada legally, and do a study here. Okay? The presentation is about how to apply for a study permit and temporary resident visa. And my name is Ying, and this slideshow is actually prepared by me and at CIE here. Okay, so here's our agenda, something that we are going to cover today. We'll discuss the differences between a study permit, a TRV, and an ETA. And we are also discussing details about what documents are required for study permit applications, as well as for TRV and ETA applications. And I will share with you some key considerations and tips while you are preparing for your application, and then what actions you could take, what options there are for you when there's a processing delay. So those are the topics that will be covered today. Okay. So firstly, study permit visa and ETA. Now here on the screen, you see some images. Now two images. So the image on the left is study permit. Okay, it's a A4 size paper, and on which you will see here at the top, you will see study permit. Okay, so when you see that, that's your study permit. Okay, now the first section here will list your personal information, like where you come from, your country of citizenship, and also your full name, etc. And then the second section here is the additional information, something about what is important here is the expiry date. So it will indicate when your study permit will expire. Okay, you must always make sure that you hold a valid study permit, because otherwise the study permit will be of no use for you and you can't use it to study at U of T. Okay, it will also list the institution name. So for students at University of Toronto, here it should say University of Toronto. Okay, and below that, field of study. Okay, so institution name is important. You have to have a study permit linked to University of Toronto in order to study at University of Toronto. Okay, if it does not list the University of Toronto there, say it's George Brown College, or if you are a high school student, it would say like Ontario designated learning institutions. If your study permit for the institution name, that's what you see, then you must apply for an extension of your study permit, or you must apply for a new study permit in order to study at U of T. So to clarify or to emphasize, you must have University of Toronto listed here in order to study at University of Toronto. Okay, but in terms of field of study, it's not that important. If it is like a mistake, like if it does not is not consistent with your program information, it doesn't affect your ability to study. Of course, we would highly suggest that you contact IRCC and request a replacement to get the mistake fixed. But again, if it's not consistent with your real situation, the field of study information is not consistent with your real situation, it doesn't affect your ability to study at the University of Toronto. What is important is that you must have the University of Toronto listed um, as your institution, and it must be valid when you are studying here. Okay. Now, the last section is here below. You will see the section heading as conditions. Okay. Usually, it will list information about your work eligibility and things like that. Okay, so that is important, and you must follow the conditions and remarks here when you are studying, so that you don't end up being non-compliant. Okay, so that's the study permit. Now, on the right side of the screen, you will see a image of a temporary resident visa. Okay, I don't have an image of an ETA because it's some kind of a paper document that's not usually available for us. But students who are who come from visa exempt countries, they usually hold an ETA, and you should also keep in mind the expiry date of your ETA. It's usually valid for 5 years or up until the day that your passport expires, whatever comes first. Okay. Now, students who come from visa required countries will have TRV in their passport. Okay, so this is a sticker in their passport. Here, usually it will say, so under category, you might see SW1, which means that the student has both a study permit and work permit, and the TRV is issued for their study at a designated learning institute. Or you would also see S1, S-1, S-1, and that means that a student holds a study permit. So their program may not have a co-op component, which is why they are only issued a study permit. Okay, or you could also see V-1 here. It generally means that it's a visitor visa. It may not be connected with a study permit, but still is a valid visitor visa. So whatever you see here on the category, whether it's a V1 or S1 or SW1, they are all temporary resident visas, and they are the travel documents that you must have in order to enter Canada. Okay, so if you do not have a TRV, even if you have a study permit, you won't be able to enter Canada. Okay, so make sure that you have the expiry date in your mind, and you have a valid TRV or an ETA so that you can enter Canada and study with your study permit. Okay, so to summarize this page, a study permit is an immigration document that gives you the legal status to study here inside Canada, whereas a TRV or an ETA is a travel document. Okay, it's a immigration document that allows you to enter Canada. Okay, without a TRV or an ETA, even if you have a study permit, you won't be able to enter Canada. Okay, so make sure that you have both documents, a study permit and a TRV, or a study permit and an ETA, so that you can come into Canada and study here. Okay. Okay, so that's the study differences between study permit and TRV. Okay, so when it comes to a study permit, you should make sure that it always stay valid, and it should be um, renewed before the visa expiry date or your study permit expiry date. Usually, we recommend that students apply for an extension at least 30 days before its expiry date. So let's say if your study permit has an expiry date on May 31st, 2026, we would recommend that you apply for an extension at least on April 30th, 2026. Okay, that's highly recommended just in case that any unexpected situations happen so that you cannot study here. But technically, you can apply for an extension as long as your current study permit is still valid. Okay, so if your study permit has an expiry date on May 31st, 2026, technically it's fine even if you submit your application on May the 30th, 2026. Okay, as long as you have submitted the extension application, before the expiry date of your study permit, you will have maintained status and you can continue to study while on maintained status. However, you must make sure that you submit the application before it expires. Okay, so it's an immigration document that allows you to work while studying if you meet the eligibility criteria for work. The eligibility criteria for work basically generally is like you must stay registered as a full-time student, and also your study permit must have relevant conditions that allow you to work. Okay, so that's the eligibility criteria. And also, when you are registered as a full-time student during regular terms, you can work off campus up to 24 hours per week. So I repeat, it's up to 24 hours per week off campus. I want to emphasize on that because in the past, the students are only allowed to work up to 20 hours per week off campus. And then a couple of years ago, IRCC updated their policy. So currently, students can work up to 24 hours per week off campus if they are registered as a full-time student during the regular terms. In their scheduled breaks, they can work full-time, unlimited hours if they meet the eligibility criteria. Okay. On campus, international students are allowed to work full-time, unlimited hours if they are registered as a full-time student. Okay, so that's the work eligibility. Okay, so a study permit is required to complete the mandatory work component of a study program. So this policy became effective on April 1st, 2026. Okay, what it means is that in the past, before April 1st, 2026, students generally need a co-op work permit in order to work on the mandatory work component of their study program. But starting from this year in April, as long as you hold a valid study permit, which has the work conditions, and also you are registered as a full-time student. And another condition is that the work must be a component, a required component of a study program. If you meet all those conditions, you can work on your co-op, on your internship, field placement, whatever name it might be called. You can work on them, okay? And there's no hour restrictions, okay? And you also need a valid study permit in order to apply for a post-graduation work permit from within Canada. So as you can see here, a study permit is very important in terms of your legal status in Canada, in terms of your work eligibility, and in terms of your future applications. Okay, so again, it's very important that you make sure that your study permit stays valid throughout your study year. Okay. Okay, so that's about study permit. Now let's dive into the topic about study permit application. So what you should keep in mind when you're applying from a study permit. Okay. So first things first. And inside Canada, application, study permit application, and outside Canada, study permit application, they are different. Okay, although they are both study permit applications, the requirement, the eligibility criteria, they are all different, and the name is different. Okay, so when you are outside Canada, you will have to submit a new study permit application, even if your current study permit is still valid. Okay, so when you are outside Canada and you submit an application, it's called a new study permit application. You don't have to have a valid study permit in order to apply for a new study permit from outside Canada. Okay, but even if you have a valid study permit, the application will be called a new study permit application and will be defined as a new study permit application, and the documents are different. Okay, now if you want to apply for a study permit extension application, you must be physically inside Canada, and your study permit must be valid. Okay, you must meet both conditions. One, you must be physically inside Canada, and two, your current study permit must be valid for you to apply for an extension application from within Canada. If you are inside Canada, but your study permit has already expired or has become invalid, you can only apply for a restoration, and or you must leave Canada and apply for a new study permit from outside Canada. Okay, so that is very important. Okay. All the applications must be submitted online. If you have any disability, you may request submitting the application through paper by mail, but generally applications are submitted online. There's no in-person application open to anyone. Okay. And you also need to have an online account, a GCP account, Government of Canada account with the IRCC in order to submit the application. Okay, so that's some things that you must keep in mind. So I just mentioned that when you apply for from outside Canada or versus when you apply from inside Canada, the documents might be requirements might be different. Okay, so now let's go into more details about that. So when you apply from outside Canada, you will use the form IMM 1294 to prepare for your application. Okay, so the form ID is usually listed on the left bottom of the form. You will find the form ID and the version of the form there. And when you are applying from within Canada, an extension application, the form that you will use is IMM 5709. Okay, so again, you can check the form ID at the bottom left of the form. Okay. So when you are applying for outside Canada, like when you are a newly admitted student, you will use a letter of acceptance when you apply for this study permit, whether it is from outside Canada or from inside Canada. I'm referring to inside Canada because I know that we have students who are just graduating from their high school, and they are applying from inside Canada for their study permit to study at U of T. Okay, so in both cases, you must use a letter of acceptance along with your application, uh, regardless of where you submit the application. But for current students or returning students, you don't use the letter of acceptance anymore, okay, because you are already studying here. Instead, you use a letter of enrollment, sometimes also known as a letter of registration, for your study permit application. Okay. Whether it's a letter of acceptance or a letter of enrollment registration, the letter should include your name, your student ID, the length of the program indicated by the expected start and end dates of the program, and the designated learning institution number. Okay, so the U of T designated learning institution number, or DLI number, I have put it on the screen, which is 01933274615. If the letter does not have the DLI number, you should provide this number in the application form, IMM 1294 or IMM 5709. Okay, make sure that the DLI number that you put there is correct. Okay, because the IRCC will take actions to verify the DLI number, and if there's a mismatch between the DLI number of the DLI that you are going to study in and the DLI number that you provided to them, it would complicate the application, and there could be significant delay that resulted from that. Okay, so make sure that the DLI number is accurate. Okay, so that's the second document that is needed for your study permit application. Now, in addition to that, you should provide proof of means of financial support. Okay. So in our practice, we came across a lot of students who ask questions about means of financial support. So how much money should they demonstrate in their application? What documents they should include with their application? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Here I just providing you with a simple explanation here. So your proof of funds should demonstrate that you have enough money to cover at least 1 year of tuition and living expenses. Okay, the figure for tuition will differ for every student, but in terms of living expenses, according to IRCC, for an annual living expense, you should be able to demonstrate that you have at least $22,895 in your account in order to cover your expenses here. Okay, so in other words, you need proof of enough funds. You need proof to show that you are able to cover both the tuition and the $22,895 for your application. If you have already paid the tuition, you can use the payment receipt plus proof of funds that cover the living expenses with your application. Okay. If you haven't paid your tuition yet, you must show that you have money to cover the tuition and the living expenses. Okay. So that's how it goes with regard to the number for the funds. Okay. So you can use the following one of the following documents or several of the following documents to support your application. So for example, proof of tuition payment, proof of scholarships or loans, your personal bank statements, or if you are sponsored by someone, so for example, your parents, so their bank accounts and their bank statements, etc., as a proof of funding. Okay, IRCC actually has a designated web page which has more detailed information about what documents you might use to as a means of financial support. So simply by Google searching proof of funds study permit, you will be able to find that page. Okay, and if you still have questions about whether I could use this bunch of documents to support my application, you can just book an appointment with our office, and we can help you review the documents. Okay, and also one more important point is that when you apply for your study permit, um, it's not only enough to just show that you have the funding. Okay, we have quite a few cases in which students were refused, although they have demonstrated that they have enough funds to cover both tuition and the living expenses. Okay, in those cases, the refusal reason indicated by the provided by the officer was that students do not did not provide sufficient funds to cover their study. But the key issue there is that students, although they provided enough funds, they didn't provide proof of the source of the income. Okay, so officers might say that the money is a big lump sum, and that they were not required that the income source is reliable and stable. Okay, so it's also important for you to show the source of income with documents such as employment letter, pay slips, pay stubs, or any other similar documents in order to show that income of the source is reliable. Okay. So we may go into details. I mean, if you have any specific questions, you may contact us through an appointment, and the advisors here would be happy to go into details with you. Okay. So in addition to the form, the letter of acceptance or letter of enrollment registration, and the financial document, another important document that will be required for your study permit application is your provincial attestation letter or proof of PAL exemption. Okay, so this is also a new policy that started from 2024. Students must submit a provincial attestation letter when they apply for a PAL, when they apply for their study permit. And if they're exempt from the PAL requirement, they must submit a proof of PAL exemption. Okay. For newly admitted, so how do you receive your PAL? Now, for newly admitted students, you can download it. You can download it from the admission portal, where you receive all notices regarding your admission. Okay, so once you have paid your deposit and the deposit has arrived in the U of T account, you should expect to see the PAL in your portal like a week afterwards. Okay. However, if you are a returning student and you are applying for a new study permit from outside Canada, or if you have applied for a study permit inside Canada but it was refused and you want to apply for it again, you can request a second PAL from CIE. Okay, so how you do that you send us an email with your information, including your student ID, your U of T email, and your name as it appears on your passport so that we can request a PAL for you. Okay. So that is when a PAL is required for your study permit application. Okay. However, if you are applying for a study permit extension from within Canada and it does not involve a change of DLI, you have been studying at U of T and you will continue to study at the U of T or level of study, which means that it doesn't involve, for example, moving from secondary study to post-secondary study. Okay, you are exempt from the PAL requirement. Or if you are studying for your master's degree or PhD degree, you are also exempt from the PAL requirement. Okay, you don't need a PAL, but you are still required to submit proof of PAL exemption. So the proof of PAL exemption is a letter written by yourself. Okay, you should write the letter yourself. And in the letter, you should briefly explain which exemption category you qualify under. Okay, so you can simply say, dear officer, I'm applying for a study permit extension, and it does not involve a change of DOI or level of study. Okay, I have been studying at U of T and I will continue to study at U of T as an undergrad student. Therefore, I'm exempt from PAL requirements. Okay, just a few sentences to illustrate which exemption category you fall under. You may also attach your current study permit and your enrollment registration letter together with this letter, combine all the documents into one PDF document, and then upload it to the section designated for proof of PAL exemption, and then you will be good. Okay, so that's PAL and a PAL exemption. The including PAL or proof of PAL exemption in your application is very important because we have seen students whose application were refused because they didn't submit a PAL when they were required to submit a PAL. Okay, so this is important. Okay. Now, in addition to that, of course, you need to submit copy of your scanned copy of your passport. You don't need to provide them the physical copy of your passport. Okay, make sure that you include a bio page, I mean the signature page and pages that have visas and entry of the exit stamps to Canada and to other countries when you upload the document. If the pages are blank, you don't need to include them in the application. Okay. You also need to submit a digital photo. On IRCC website, there's detailed instructions on the requirements of the photo. You could also find the requirements in the document checklist once you have the application there. Okay. For study permit application, you need to pay $150. That's the application fee. Okay. So those are the general documents required for a study permit application. Depending on where you are, some other documents might be required, but they are optional. Okay. So for example, based on your country or citizenship, you may also need to submit a family information form. It could be IMM 5707 or IMM 5645. So that varies due to your country, based on your country of citizenship. Okay. You may also want to submit a medical exam report if you have lived in a designated country for more than 6 months within the last 12 months, or if you plan to work while you are studying part-time in primary or secondary schools or healthcare environments. Okay, if you do not, if you do not do the medical exam, you may still be able to submit the application and you may still be able to approve for a study permit. It's just that on the conditions, in the section of conditions, IRCC may indicate that you may not receive employment in school environments or healthcare environments. Okay, so that will limit the environments in which you will be working. Okay, now if your biometrics have become invalid, you may be required to give them again, to do them again. Okay, or even if your biometrics are still valid, IRCC may still require you to do biometrics. Okay, if they require that, they will send you a correspondence letter. Okay, so that's the optional required documents. And if you are a newly admitted student, or if there's any additional information you want to provide IRCC, but it's not included in the forms, we would also suggest that you write an explanation letter, and you will provide all the details in the explanation letter and submit it along with your application. Okay, so those are the required documents. Okay. Now, depending on where you submit the application, the processing timeline may be long or short. Okay, so for example, currently, for an extension application submitted from within Canada, the general timeline of processing is around 89 days. Okay, and if you submit your application from outside Canada, sometimes it's a couple of months, or you could also take only a couple of weeks or even 1 week for you to receive your application. However, what I'm talking about here is like a general type processing timeline. When it comes to specific cases, it can be faster or shorter. Okay. Typically, the processing timeline will be long if your application is selected for security screening. Okay. I've seen cases in which students um, wait for like a year or even longer, and their application is still in process. Okay, so in that case, what should we do? Okay, when the processing is delayed, what should we do? Okay, so the thing is that although the delay might not be caused by you, okay, you didn't submit the you submit the application in time or even early, uh, quite ahead of time, it could still be delayed, even though the it's not your fault, you still need to um, comply with immigration regulations, which means that you must have a valid study permit in order to start your study or continue your study at University of Toronto. Okay, so if you are applying from outside Canada, remember we mentioned that it is a new study permit application. Okay, so if you are applying for a new study permit and it's still in process, unfortunately, you cannot start your study or you cannot resume your study until the study permit is approved. Okay, so if there's a significant delay and affect the start of your study, then you should request a deferral of your program start date. Okay, so let's say if you, for example, if you are a newly admitted student at University of Toronto, you're happy your program is scheduled to start in September 2026. You have submitted your application in April 2026 and you think that all set. Okay, so I will just wait for the study permit and then I can start my study in September. You wait and wait, but IRCC is slow and it's August and they are still processing your application. You contacted them many times through web form, and you requested and speed up of the processing of your application, but they're still doing their work, then unfortunately, it is unlikely that you will receive your study permit before September, okay, before the start of your study. In that case, you should contact your registrar's office, share the information with them, with your registrar's office, and request to defer the start of your study, okay? Because again, you cannot start your study until your study permit is approved. Okay? So once your deferral is approved, you should again share this information with IRCC. Okay, you should tell them through web form that because of the delay in the processing of my study permit, I will not be able to start my study as scheduled in September 2026. I have communicated with my registrar's office and they agree. They allow me to defer my the start of my study to January 2027 or September 2027. Okay. So the reason that you want to communicate this information to IRCC is so that they are updated on your situation. Okay? And they know that University of Toronto still welcomes you to come and study here at a later date. So it will help them to make a favorable decision on your application. Okay, so it is very important to keep the communication going between IRCC and the school. Okay, um, and of course, we don't want that to happen. So we would suggest that you plan your timeline carefully, including your visa, your travel, and your housing. Okay. So that's why we usually suggest that students apply ahead of time, just to reduce the impact of processing delay on their ability to study. Okay. So this is when you apply from outside Canada for a new study permit. Okay. Now, when you apply for an extension from inside Canada, you are in a better situation. So as long as you apply before the expiry, the expiry date of your current study permit, you will have maintained status, even if your study permit expires and your application is still in process. Maintained status means that you are still here inside Canada on a legal status. It's just that you have an application ongoing. Okay. So during your maintained status, you may continue studying and working under the same conditions while waiting. It's important that you stay inside Canada while you are on maintained status, because once you leave Canada, you will lose your maintained status. And when you come back, if you are able to come back, you won't be able to continue studying and working. Okay. So again, it's highly important that you submit your application before your current study permit expires. So you should avoid travel during processing, as it may affect re-entry and your status. Okay. Okay, so those are about study permit and important things. Now let's move to the next topic, which is visa, temporary resident visa, or ETA application and important things. Okay. A lot of students refer to TRV or ETA as visitor visa. So they have different names. When you are from a visa exempt country, what you have is an ETA. And when you are from visa required country, it's a temporary resident visa or TRV. Okay. So it is required to travel to Canada as a student. As I mentioned before, if you hold a study permit and you don't have a TRV or an ETA, you will not be able to enter Canada. On one hand, airline agents will not allow you to board the plane with only a study permit. On the other hand, even if you are able to board the plane, you will not be able to enter Canada if you only have a study. Okay, so a study permit alone will not allow you to enter Canada unless you are from the United States as American citizens. Okay, as American citizens are visa and ETA exempt. Okay, so you will be able to enter Canada with your US passport. Okay. So if you are inside Canada and your temporary resident visa or ETA expires, it's not an issue. Okay. You can stay inside Canada. You still have the valid status as a student, and you can apply for a new TRV or ETA from within Canada. It's not an issue. Okay. When you apply for your study permit from outside Canada, your visitor visa will be issued to you together with the study permit. But when you apply for a study permit extension from inside Canada, a new TRV or ETA will not be issued to you automatically. You must apply separately. Okay. So the important thing here is that when you are inside Canada, you hold a valid study permit, but your TRV has expired. Usually, it's not a big issue as long as you stay inside. But if you have any travel plans, make sure that you have a valid TRV. Okay. So if you are inside Canada, you have to apply for a new visa after getting your study permit. You cannot apply for it along with your study. Okay. So if you are from a visa exempt country, but you require an ETA, a new ETA will be issued to you automatically once your study permit application is approved. So for ETA holders, the process is simple because once you have applied for a study permit application, whether it is inside or outside Canada, an new ETA will be issued to you automatically. Okay. One last point is that you have to apply online. Again, there's no in-person application. You have to apply online. You must have a GCT account unless you have a disability, in which case you can apply through paper by mail. Okay, so those are important things about visa or ETA application. And okay, so one last point is that when you apply when you apply for your TRV, you don't need to send a copy of your passport unless your application is approved. Okay, when your application is approved, IRCC will send you a passport request letter. And then you follow the instructions in the passport request letter and send your passport to a visa processing office close to you in order to get it stamped. Okay. It doesn't matter where you submit the application. What I mean is that, for example, you can you can apply for this TRV from within Canada. Then you leave Canada and your application, TRV application is approved when you are outside Canada, and you don't have to send your passport to Ottawa office for that stamp. You can send it to wherever you are, where it has a visa processing office to get that stamp. Okay, so you have more flexibility there, which is a good thing. Okay, so these are important things that you should know about visa or ETA application. Again, if you are applying for a new study permit from outside Canada, a TRV or an ETA will be issued to you together with your study permit application. You don't have to apply separately for a visa or an ETA. Okay. Now, then what documents are required for a visa application? A visitor visa application. Okay, so if you are whether you are applying from inside Canada or outside Canada, the form is the same. You should use the form IMM 5257. So check the form ID to make sure that you use the right form. Okay. If you are a returning student, you should include your recent education transcript with your TRV application. Okay. You should also submit a copy of your study permit if you are applying for a new TRV from within Canada. Okay. If your study permit has been approved, but you haven't received a physical copy of the study permit, you can use the In Canada approval letter along with your TRV application, and you will be able to find In Canada approval letter in your online application account. Okay. For new students, you don't have a study permit yet. and your study permit application is ongoing. So what you need to use is your letter of acceptance, okay, so that officers know that you are going to travel to Canada as a student. But again, if you are applying for your study permit, you don't have to do it separately. The requirement for means of financial support is almost the same as a study permit application. Okay, so you need to be able to show that you can cover your tuition and your living expenses here. You should be able to provide supporting documents that prove that you have access to that money, and also that the source of income is reliable and stable. Okay? This is because you are traveling to Canada as a student. So the proof of funds requirements are almost the same. If you're only applying for a visitor visa, it could be different, but because we are speaking with the international students at U of T here, so it's basically the same. Okay, now for TRV application, you don't need a PAL, but you may need to provide proof of provincial attestation letter exemption. Okay, so again, you should write a letter yourself and state that you are exempt from the PAL requirement because you are applying for a TRV, a temporary resident visa. Okay, the reason that this document is required is because of the system setup of IRCC. Okay, when you are applying for a TRV as a student, the online eligibility questionnaire, because it has you confirmed that you are a student, they will definitely lead to the question about, which is why you should write this letter yourself and upload it to your application. So again, you will need to provide a scanned copy of your passport, including your signature page and pages that have visas and entry or exit stamps. Okay, you should also provide a digital photo. The application fee is $100 for visitor visa applications. Okay. Okay, so those are the required documents for TRV application. Okay, now what considerations you should bear in mind? Do we have any tips for you when you apply for your study permit or your TRV? Okay, so the first important tip is that you should always submit additional documents if requested. Okay, so it happens to some students when they have submitted their application, IRCC may ask them to submit additional documents. Okay, IRCC usually sends the correspondence to their online GCT account, and they usually give the applicants a deadline, a timeline by which they must submit the required documents. Okay, so what it means is that after submitting your application, you should keep monitoring your GCT account, your application account, and your email. In case IRCC sends you any correspondence, you want to respond promptly to avoid delays. Okay. If you miss the deadline, the officers can refuse your application because you did not provide the required documents within the timeline. Okay, so keep an eye on your application account even after you have submitted your application. Okay, so that's one important tip. And in addition to that, we would highly suggest that you keep a record of everything you submit. Okay? What I usually suggest students is that they create a space on their laptop, on their hard disk, or in their cloud, a designated space for their immigration applications. And I would suggest that you put everything related to immigration application in that designated space. Okay? Because a lot of times students do not keep a record of the things that they submitted. And once they have submitted application, they kind of sometimes they came to the question like, did I submit this? Did I put in the wrong information? What did I do at that time? And you can't rely on your memory for that information. right? And the thing is with immigration application is once you have submitted the application, you have submitted the forms and all the documents that you have submitted, you won't have access to them unless you keep a copy yourself or you require GCMS notes. Okay. But the thing about GCMS notes is that it takes time to be processed. Okay. So if you do not have a copy yourself, it will be very challenging for you to recall what you have told IRCC, what you have submitted with your first application. And if there are any issues with your application, you won't be able to know how to fix it, okay? Because you can't rely on your memory for that. Okay? So again, I would highly suggest that you create a designated space, a space for all the immigration documents, including the forms and the supporting documents that you have submitted along with your application. It could be on your laptop, it could be in a cloud space, but make sure that you have a copy of your application. Okay. Okay, so that's about the key considerations and tips. So from what we have just discussed, you may already get the feeling, get the idea that keeping everything on track with your application is highly important, right? So at CIE at the University of Toronto here, we are trying to support our students in keeping everything on track. That's why we have developed CIE team. One of my colleagues have developed important tracker tools for students, okay, so that they can have everything organized. Okay, so the first tracker tool is called a study permit application tracker. Okay, so you can access this tracker through the URL here. I have listed here. Okay, so if you can take a note there. Okay, so the study permit application tracker is designed for incoming international students. Okay, what it does is that it allows you to take a note of the date when you submitted your application. And once you have received your study permit, you may also update the information on the tracker tool. Okay, so it allows you to share your study permit application timeline with us. Okay, the benefits of sharing your study permit application timeline with us uh, are a few. Okay, so firstly, it can help us prepare for your arrival at the University of Toronto. And secondly, it gives us data about how long it generally takes for students at U of T to receive their study permit. So if we see any delays, like tendency or delays that happen mostly around a certain time of the year, we will be able to communicate with the IRCC as a community, okay, so that U of T students do not suffer from significant delays. Because once delays happen, you have to defer the start of your study, and all of your plans will be affected. So it's highly beneficial, and it's highly important for us to work as a community and communicate with the IRCC so that we prevent the issues from happening in advance. Okay, so that's the study permit application tracker tool. Okay, and the second tool that we have developed for our students here is an immigration document reminder tool. Okay, so you have your study permit, you have your TRV, but it's kind of challenging for you to always remembering the expiry dates of those documents, right? So with this tool, what you can do is that you can just simply enter the expiry date of your documents in the tool, okay? And then when it is about to expire, the tool will send you a reminder. Hey, your study permit will expire in 30 days. Please submit an extension in time. Okay, so this is highly important because as we can see here, as we discussed, you must have a valid study permit in order to continue to study and work So it will be it will be great if you have like a personal assistant who keeps reminding you when when it is time for you to submit your application, right? And also when it comes to post-graduation work permit application, students must apply within a timeline. Okay, so for inside Canada applications, the application must be submitted from within days, within 90 days. For outside Canada application, you have 180 days to submit the application. Um, the key issue here is that it's highly important for you to submit the application within the timeline because otherwise you lose your eligibility. Okay, so I personally think, and I believe that everyone agreed that this reminder tool will help you a lot. Okay, it will help you relieve your memory space, and so you don't, and also you don't miss the important deadline. Okay, so how you can access the tracker tool? The URL link is here. Okay, so just go to the link and use the tool to help yourself. Okay. Okay, so those are important things about study permit application, TRB application, and tracker tool. Okay, so just a short disclaimer here. We have done our best to present this information accurately and clearly, but content is subject to change. IRCC is making a lot of changes to their policies, and policy updates are always there. So for the most, the information is accurate as of present, but for the most up-to-date information, please consult IRCC themselves. Their website is ircc.canada.ca. Okay. If you need more information or more personalized guidance with regard to your application, you could also talk to us, okay, at CIE. Our website is uoft.me/immigration-UTSG. You could also send us an email, and our email address is isa.cie@toronto.ca. Right? So we monitor our inbox on a daily basis. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us through the email. Okay. We also hold Q&A sessions twice a week or during the peak seasons and sometimes once a week. Okay, so feel free to join our drop-in our Q&A sessions. It's online. It's drop-in sessions. So you may come with your questions. An international student immigration advisor will be there, ready to answer your questions regarding your study permit, or your post-graduation work permit, or your visitor visa, or your work eligibility, etc. Okay. If you need more customized support, you can also book an appointment with us. We offer one-on-one appointments for our international students. Okay, so you can log into Folio and book a one-on-one appointment with an immigration advisor, and we would be happy to assist you with there. Okay. Okay, so that's some general information about study permit and visitor visa applications. And I'm now open to more questions. Thank you, Sandy.